Tim Melton here as we broadcast from the Culver studio with this spoiler-filled review of The Brutalist. If you haven't yet seen the Adrien Brody-led movie, maybe you want to go check it out first in a theater near you and then come back to this as we are set to have a spoiler-filled discussion. This is your one and only warning. I'm here alongside Tyler Lionel Johns, always looking for
Where am I? What year is it?
yeah, that's kind of been the thought process with the production of this movie. This was a movie that was supposed to start filming 5 years ago, and we're just now seeing here in January of 2025 as it
Well, what happened? Was there something happening 5 years ago?
there was
Oh,
kind of this big pandemic, Tyler, but it did affect the shooting schedule, and this is a film that's been sort of plagued from the start, production-wise, with being able to get up off the ground. A lot like what you see from the actual construction process of characters and what they're fighting for here in the movie. But here we are in January of 2025. The Oscars are coming up in a couple of months, and this is a movie that's been nominated now for 10 Academy Awards. And I'd like to go through each one of those and talk about what we appreciated most from the nominations or what we maybe didn't like about The Brutalist, because I think I like it a little bit more than you do, but it's an experience. Let's start off with this before we get into the award nominations. This is a film that is broken up into two acts with a 15-minute intermission, and it's a big sort of selling point, or maybe even a detraction for some that don't feel like they want to have to go to the movies and sort of go through a 4 hour total experience. What did you think of the actual odd experience that was watching The Brutalist first and foremost?
definitely a theatrical experience to remember. It is unlike any other movie I have gone to go see in the theaters over the past year or so, and that's just because it's built as almost this sort of Homer-esque epic tale of the American dream and immigration. And yeah, I think it's unlike any other experience you could ever have in a theater. And I think the structure kind of helps because you are getting into uh I mean an epic tale. That's the only way I can describe it.
There's pros and cons to both. For some people, that's what draws them in. It's an
Mhm.
event. For some people, that's what's pushing them away because it looks like it's too much of an endurance test.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, you could watch 2 or 3 depending on which movies you pick, other movies at the theater this weekend instead of The Brutalist and spend the same amount of time, but, you definitely won't get an experience like The Brutalist. This is a film that begs to be seen on the screen, not just in a theater, but in a theater with the proper audience, giving the movie its respect to really showcase what they can do.
In our screening, this is just us, our experience. In our screening, the theater was very warm. That was one complaint I had. I mean, it was just extremely hot in there. And when you're in there for 4 hours baking, it can really test you. And that I still loved the movie. The other thing is the first portion of the film was so dark on screen that I was like, what is I can't believe they decided to go with this. And the next thing I noticed was someone up at the projector had taken a lens off of the actual way it was being projected, and all of a sudden the screen was much brighter and the images were much more um, able to be seen, and the colors were much more vivid, and all of a sudden I was enjoying it way more. So the theatrical going experience is a part of this film's conversation,
Mhm.
because you have to have a good theater going experience to, I think, truly enjoy everything the Brutalist has to offer.
Yeah, this is a movie where I think more people would watch it if it were a sort of limited mini series where you could say, "Oh, it's 4 hours in total, but it's 4 one-hour episodes." I think more people would watch it, but it would hurt the end product doing
Totally
it that way.
Totally agree with you there. There's a lot of technical dynamics to this movie and the way
Mhm.
it's presented that it wants you to know of those. It's part of the marketing charm of going to see this, and it definitely led to a lot of seats being sold in our theater, I think. It made it an event their opening night here in town for us. Okay, let's get to it. Let's start off with this. Nominated for Best Actor, Adrien Brody. Without his performance in this movie, I mean, he carries almost every scene of the film with either being the main one performing or the
Mhm.
main one that is reacting to a maybe a dynamic performance that's happening on screen. I thought Adrian Brody knocked this performance out of the park.
I agree with you. He was very charismatic in this role, and I went into this film a bit on the fence because of the runtime and just the amount of hype it was getting. And I thought, well, you know what? If Adrian Brody can hold your attention for 4 hours straight, then yeah, he probably gets the nomination. But then we watched the movie last night, and you see him display every emotion in the human mind possible, doing it all very authentically, very believably, and it's just captivating.
It's
He did a fantastic job.
he draws you into the
Mhm,
performance, and it doesn't feel Hollywood.
mhm,
It feels raw. I mean, there's drug addiction in this that doesn't feel it doesn't feel unearned. It doesn't feel like, "Oh, we just have to have an afflicted character." It
right,
feels like a natural part of the story that's lingering in the background the entire time, even to the point where you kind of forget about it because he's so passionate about his work that when you're reminded of it, you're like, "Oh, man, don't go down this path. Don't make these mistakes." And he's a functioning drug addict
mhm.
in this film, and it doesn't feel like it's in there for the sake of let's give him something to perform with. It feels earned as a character arc, in my opinion.
I agree with you again. This it would have been very easy to make the drug use and abuse feel cheap and almost glamorous in a way just to dramatize the tragedies
Mhm.
in Laszlo's life. But I thought it just lined up with the character. Like he just got to America. He's barely putting clothes on his back and food in his belly. He's got to figure out a way to make it. Yeah, you're gonna see higher rates of drug use with someone who's going through that, and you still see that today, and that's why I don't feel like it's cheap or unearned at all. We still have an opioid epidemic in this country, and it primarily concerns people who, don't have a whole lot of disposable income.
This movie does a really superb job of painting the country as a solution and painting the country as a
Mhm,
problem and not hitting you over the head with it, in my opinion. For some other people, they may be like, oh, if you're an American exceptionalist, you may watch this movie with more of a negative take coming out of it. But if you are one that goes, look, there's some dark corners of the American experience, and we're going to take a peek into some of those windows, and it ain't going to be pretty. You get that here. And I do feel like it's a rewarding experience that creates a lot of post film conversation.
mhm.
I felt last night we could have had a 4-hour conversation after a 4-hour movie.
We could, but we wanted this one to be a little fresher, so we did not do that. We were talking for about 20
Yeah,
minutes, and then we said, "You know, we really gotta save the rest of this.
yeah.
See you tomorrow." But, yeah, I feel like, everything was earned. Um, Towards the end of the movie, you see just a lot more despair and more of the realization that, "Oh, this country of freedom isn't the freedom isn't free. You're gonna have to pay for it either through sacrificing some traditionalist form of yourself, your old customs, and assimilating into American culture, or you won't make it." And the movie also doesn't say it's like, "Oh, just shouldn't have come here to America." It painted the Ellis Island
Right.
sequence as this moment of hope. It's like, ah, finally here. It's
Yeah.
time to really make something of myself here in the States. And I think that was beautiful because they could have taken it too far in either direction where you know.
Yeah. You've heard the saying that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes.
So that is a message that I continue to see radiate through the story over
Mhm,
and over and over again. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Every time he thought he had sound footing as a character and he had it figured out,
mhm.
there would be a curveball where he'd have to hit the restart button every single time. And it didn't grow annoying to me. It was actually what molded the value of the character, and that internally, the thing that drove them was excellence within their profession. That was the only way he really could express himself openly and honestly. And I uh I was worried that The Brutalist was going to be too good. The hype around it's going to be too good to actually be true. And I'm happy to report that I think it is legit. I think it's a legit product for people to consume, and I think it is potentially a legit Best Picture contender to win the whole thing. It nominated for Best Picture, probably the least surprising nomination out of all of them, because this is a movie we've been hearing about for months here. It's going to have some competition. If you're interested in how the awards race is shaping up, we've talked about that multiple times on the live show, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, of sort of where things are. Check out our live show right after the Oscars were nominations were announced, as we have a breakdown of sort of what The Brutalist is facing, even before we had seen the movie. Let's get into best sound, or sorry, best original score. Best original score, because the music in this movie is a huge part of the puzzle. I thought it was beautifully presented. The music resonated, it goes through your bones.
Mhm.
See this movie with the best sound system possible, because the best original score is definitely it's worthy of the praise when it comes to the music infused into this experience.
Yes, it feels both, patriotic, yet, timely in a way. It feels like it belongs to the time period that the movie takes place in. It feels grand, it feels
That
epic, it's, "Boom, welcome to America,"
right.
and then it sort of morphs throughout the film into being more, I guess, just keeping up with the times. We got more of that 80s sort of Euro beat kinda feel towards the end of the movie, and, all of it was done very well.
That transition into 1980 towards the end of the movie,
So good.
that's the number one reason I want to go see the movie again. Like that
Really?
being in that jarring phase of going from what felt like, even though it had, progressed throughout multiple decades. I mean, going from where we started there to going to that 80s sort of vibe. I mean, it's just a perfect, you really do feel like you had been on a life's journey at that point. And
Mhm.
a lot of the original score, a lot of the music in this, it just hits for me on a big level. So that was great. Best production design, no surprise there. I mean, the sets, the imagery, there are questions about how much artificial intelligence was used, not only for the Hungarian dialect, but also for potential mock ups of different sketches that they wanted to replicate. You actually have had the director coming out, who's been nominated, by the way, for Best Director there in Brady Corbet. Um, he's come out very passionately against any use of AI, was just simply to enhance performances. It wasn't used in any way to replace or take away from some of the performances that we saw, as this one has multiple acting nominations. Not only Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor there for Guy Pearce, and also Best Supporting Actress for Felicity Jones. So, acting across the board, um, really strong in this. It's a great ensemble that I definitely think is up for a SAG award for a reason.
I agree. I thought Felicity Jones was, unexpected standout for me. Had sort of the same feeling, when I watched it as, gosh, I'm forgetting her name now. Who played, Oppenheimer's wife?
Yeah, so that would be Emily Blunt.
Yes, Emily Blunt. I really liked her performance in Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
and, I felt like Felicity Jones kind of plays that same role in, Laszlo's life as, Kitty played to,
Yeah,
Oppie.
and I think totally fair to bring in, because when I was driving in today here to the Culver studio, I was thinking about Oppenheimer winning last year and how this is definitely the most Oppenheimer movie of
Mhm.
2024, technically, because that's when it's up for with the awards and everything, and then Oppenheimer being a 2023 movie. I do feel like there are a lot of parallels there. and Oppenheimer got across the finish line. Will the Brutalist get across the finish line when it comes to the awards race here? I think that they structured this movie not only on screen really well, but also structured the marketing and the release of it really
Mhm.
well, where it sort of built up demand and you just sort of knew the minute that it was available to be seen, like you wanted to see it. And that's the way I felt about this. And I do think I want to see it again. What did you think about the supporting acting performance that we saw from Guy Pearce? Because a lot of people are saying this may be the best he's ever been on camera as sort of the main antagonist in the story, given the fact that there's a very heavy scene that takes place later in the film once we start to realize true motivations
Mhm.
of why his kindness has gone as far as it has. What did you make of his performance? And what do you make of overall the character that keeps things moving sort of to a darker and darker place?
I thought it was a great performance, really believable, reminiscent, in a way of, Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. I don't know why I was reminded of that character so
Completely
much
fair. Yeah.
throughout the movie, but,
This feels like a Paul Thomas Anderson
yeah,
sort of movie.
yeah, and, Harrison could definitely be the, "I drink your milkshake" type of guy. Um, I thought it was great. He, just seems like a friend at first, and it's like, "Oh, you are intellectually stimulating. Let's take this back to my house. Wait, let me give you some money. Wait, let me also give you a job. Wait, let me give your wife a job too." And just kept extending these kindnesses. And the whole time, I think throughout the first half of the movie, I was thinking, it's like, oh, this is nice. Laszlo's finding his place in America, really building something for himself, gets to show off his experience being an architect, his creativity, and has even found a nice friend. And then the second half, you think, oh, this is to what ends is Harrison using Laszlo? And you just keep thinking, like, how many different ways is he getting used right now?
Every time Harrison goes off, and this is the first time we're introduced to him, he's upset about his new library
Yes.
because he doesn't realize it's going to be this huge artistic hit and it's going to become a functional piece of his daily life. He's just outraged because of the situation he finds himself in at that moment, not being in control. Whenever he feels like he's not in control, he loses it. And as an audience, the the beauty of the performance I feel like from Pierce is that we kind of forgive him as an audience too. Like we're kind of willing to continue to lean into his character even when we know he can be relatively deranged at any given moment and completely go off at the spigot. And how many times does he scream at Laszlo or does he absolutely insult Laszlo before he eventually then sexually assaults him? You know, and it's almost like Laszlo keeps giving him opportunities, so we keep giving him opportunities as an audience. It's this really weird, complex sort of situation. There's some dark, heavy themes in this, obviously. The assault that takes place is one that I felt like I needed to file a police report after having witnessed it. I mean, it was done in a way where it was uncomfortable, but it's intentionally uncomfortable
Mhm.
and you hope that there's some sort of accountability for that action and then Felicity Jones presents that in a way that's very powerful. Joe Alwyn, he ends up basically mimicking his father's worst traits on screen. What do you make of just the intensity that the story has in its darkest moments? Because the first half is all about the optimism and hope of the American dream, and the second half is all about some of those dark corners we discussed earlier.
I think it's just another way of showing how not everything is as it seems. Not everything is as it was promised. It was such a shocking moment in the film that the lady who was sitting next to me just looks over when she hears the belt buckle jingling and just mouth agape and says, "What is this?" Yeah, she was shocked and appalled, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it just adds to the character of he's just keeps trying to do things the right way. He's got his struggles, but everyone just keeps assaulting him, taking from him, and until he's just got nothing left. Where they say, "Nope." Whether it's the officers in Dachau or it's being treated wrongly at the port of entry in Ellis Island, or being treated wrongly by Harry and Harrison in a much less severe way, just being yelled at or talked to inappropriately. And I think it just shows, just part of the immigrant experience of how you're always striving for better, and it just always seems Sisyphean in a way where as soon as you push that boulder up, somebody's just gonna take it from you and watch that boulder roll all the way back down the hill and laugh at you while you've gotta walk back down the hill and start pushing the boulder up again.
Yeah, when he throws the penny at him, I mean, you get that feeling that you
Yeah.
just laid out there, and I mean, it's a very interesting relationship because as much as Guy Pearce is using Adrien Brody's character is also using Guy Pearce's. He sees it as an opportunity for some level of security in this country.
But I think that is just more in out in the open than Guy Pearce's manipulation,
Oh,
because you assume that the guy who just moved here from Hungary is looking for work now so he can support his family and
yeah.
is overjoyed
No, don't
that
get
he
me
has a
wrong.
place to stay.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. One is capitalistic, the other is criminal. Like
Yes,
there's it's not
very clear cut difference.
right, it's not a clear but every character in this movie is using other characters to fulfill their purpose. Like every one of them has some sort of game they're playing. Every single one has some sort of, okay, I need this person to feel this way to get this thing. And some of that is the darkest end of the spectrum, and some of it, once again, is the if I can just make it through this checkpoint, I've made it, I've won the game sort of
Mhm,
feel. And that's really the complexity of the movie. Once again, I've only seen it once, you've only seen it once, but it is a movie that I feel like has such deep themes and creates such deep conversation that we're going to be talking about it as part of the cinematic landscape, especially up into the Oscars, but potentially for years to come.
and I think part of that is certainly not the lion's share of it, but this definitely plays a role in it. It was one thing that really stuck with me, but the final line in the film, uh, "Don't listen to what others say. It's about the destination, not the journey."
Yeah,
What did you make of that?
thought it was a perfect way to end the movie.
Mhm,
Really did. And there's very few ways that you can pay off that level of investment for an audience that feels fulfilling and satisfying because you've been with these characters now for so long that you want some sort of dramatic big time ending. And I thought that line was a perfect way to sum things up. And because of that line, I subconsciously feel like I need to go through that sort of journey again to see if I agree with that
mhm,
sentiment for this specific set of characters, this specific story. But I found it to be profound, and I felt like it's something that's layered enough to where it could be torn apart, and I would watch a 40-minute YouTube analyzation of just that line repeated over and over again while they make different points about The
mhm,
Brutalist. I can't wait to watch people pick this movie apart and really dissect every theme in it because it's so much of a movie
mhm,
that every chapter of this movie I found to be engrossing and interesting. I didn't find myself drifting away at any point. I didn't find myself pulling back from the screen. I felt myself leaning more in, and that's a real testament to I think the intentionality of what we've seen here from potentially your best director winner when it's all said and done in Brady Corbet. He's fantastic with what he put together on a very limited budget,
yes,
like $11 million,
mm,
something to that effect, around 10, $11 million to produce this movie. And he had to fight for this is the way we're going to do it. It's the way it's got to be done. We're not going to, I mean, it's written by him as well. We're not going to deviate from that. And I want final cut. I want to make sure that this is the experience that I want it to be. I'm gonna have the intermission in there. I continue to bring that up because it's such a I do wonder if the at-home release, is it going to have the intermission built into it? I mean, I do wonder, like, because it is a very important part of this
yes,
movie.
because
I don't think
and
it
and
will.
and and I made this comparison to you, last night during the intermission, and and that was you need the intermission because otherwise it's like cramming for a test.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah,
you've gotta study a lot and then take a break, let it all
yeah.
process, let it all sink in so you get all the questions right instead of just powering through the next 2 hours of the movie and just letting all of that hit you at once.
If there's any trend I hope is stolen from this movie, from other movies, it's maybe we try to flirt with an intermission too.
Now, the AMC does do this when they do, Bollywood movies because those also typically have intermissions built in as well.
Right. I think it's a win for the theaters. I think
I
it
agree.
they have a chance to double dip at the concession stand. They have a chance to make their patrons happier. They have a chance to limit disruption in the theater because people can check their phone. They have like a set time to be able.
Mhm.
I think the most telling thing from this whole experience was in this packed auditorium. I didn't see anybody checking their phone.
I
I didn't.
and
Maybe
I
you did, but for
once or twice, I saw somebody just kind of quickly check the time,
yeah,
but it's to be
I,
expected. It's a 4-hour movie. You're probably gonna say, "I wonder if something important has
yeah,
happened."
I didn't have the urge to check my phone.
I didn't either.
Like
Coup uh,
that's a big win for this movie. Like if you can be in there that long, as dependent as we are on our phones, to go back in time to a time period that I mean, I felt like I was authentically in that time period as well.
mhm,
They do a great job. I mean, production design, absolutely. You feel like you've been transported back. It feels like a very distinctly Americanized story that isn't afraid to throw a couple punches towards the American dream and what
mhm.
it's promoted as being. The one that we haven't mentioned when it comes to the 10 Academy Awards it's nominated for is Best Film Editing. Even though we did kind of mention that transitional phase into 1980, I do feel like it is a very well edited film with I mean, thank goodness we've already gotten the director's cut because can you imagine if we were having some sort of situation where he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna release the actual director's cut." That's not the case here with this one, but
Imagine being a data wrangler for the Brutalist
yeah,
production. You're just driving around bands filled to the brim with hard drives of raw footage for this.
I know. That would be very intense way to live. Um, what is there anything else, Tyler, that needs to be said about The Brutalist and the experience? I know that you enjoyed the first half of this movie more than the second half. I do want to hear a little bit more about what you thought of that final line that ended the movie. Of it's not about the journey; it's about the destination. Like what you sort of took away most from that, and sort of where you land on this when it comes to a star rating.
I always see people say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's about how much I've toiled for it, and that way you can appreciate it. And I saw that final line as almost an inverse, saying it's like, yeah, but if you don't make it, who cares how much you sacrificed and toiled? Because what do you have at the end? So that's how I saw it as just like, yeah, work hard, strive for the American dream, but make sure you get it first before you start uh just
Prematurely celebrating.
yeah, don't celebrate the hard work. um if you don't have it there, if you haven't achieved everything you're looking to achieve, don't brag on it. Yeah, just and also just almost like a critique of a lot of other creatives that will say it was about the journey and not about how and not about the destination. It's not about the final end result of fame, fortune, a secure life. It's about all the struggle meals they had in the studio apartment. And I've never believed that personally. I've always thought that like the struggle will probably help someone appreciate what they have now. But if they don't have the end result,
Right.
then they're not appreciating the struggle because that's just your life at that point. You don't see a purpose in it. You don't see like Adrian Brody, I believed he was suffering for his art throughout the entire film. And a lot of other people will take that mentality through life. And I think that's just a way to say no, have a good life. If you struggled to get there, if you worked hard, be proud of it, but have a good life, secure a safe future for your family first.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of that I agree with. Him suffering for his art. that's the part where I'm like, I feel like I feel like he suffered just anytime he wasn't completely engulfed by his art. I feel like there's a difference, right? Like, this is just the feeling I got is that he was such a broken individual
Mm.
when he wasn't working.
Yeah.
And that's the only place he felt like himself. But anytime that he was so ready to give up multiple times, it felt like throughout this as well. Like
Mhm.
he was willing to destroy, it's over. There's no need to fight anymore. It's done. I'm willing to go ahead and cash out. And I don't know. I feel like he wasn't really willing to completely struggle for his art. I feel like his art was the only thing that made him feel just alive throughout this entire experience. I don't know. It's a
True, but
deeper
I
thing.
don't think he was willing to, maybe not willing. I don't think he was all that interested in seeing art as a way to secure his future.
Yeah, that
If that makes sense. You know, he's foregoing his fee on the
that's
project
correct.
and, you know, having to deal with the lawsuits and everything.
The construction of the art itself was the payment for him,
Yes.
but the benefits of that and what it could do for his family, um, definitely weighed on him, but it's an interesting complex character study.
Yeah, you could see it as, you know, Laszlo really cares about all the trials and tribulations he went through and put into his work,
Mhm.
but his family doesn't. They
Yeah,
just saw him going absolutely insane
yeah,
for, uh, you know, for the
yeah.
entire time.
It did Adrian Brody's character have joy at the end of this movie? Was he in a joyous state? I mean, it's very up in the air. I mean, he's sitting there in what looks like the very much later stages of his
Mhm.
life, hearing things that may make him happy, but I'm not seeing a lot of expression. It's very, I don't know, did he ever really get the payoff of what he had worked towards? I mean, I think I want to see the movie again. I do. I want to experience it again. And I really am pulling for it to have a big showing there at the Academy Awards. I think it's worthy of all the hype, all the nominations. I'm currently right now at a 4.5 out of 5 for The Brutalist. I think it's a great piece that made me go, thank goodness films like this exist. You know, in a world where films now are meant to be background noise and streaming just discarded slop, a movie like this that demands you to pay it its proper respect and go through some level of commitment on your end to fully enjoy it is something that I give it a lot of credit for, actually, and is something that I'm happy to say is in the marketplace currently because it's so rare to have an experience like this that feels so old school and tangible. But some people will consider that approach pretentious.
Mhm.
I consider it as actually something that opens the door to a lot of maybe younger fans that strive for decorum that used to exist at the movie theater. So I think you fall into that camp as well of like the more theatrical experiences that are events that feel well earned that we can have, the better of a theater going experience we all will have for the future.
I agree. I initially going out of this movie, I gave it a 4 out of 5, and that's just because I just really wasn't a fan of the second half as much as I was the first half. But after talking about it today, it just makes me realize that this is the kind of film I have been asking for all year. An epic story where I can really sink my teeth into the ideas presented in the film.
Oh yeah.
That was one of my big problems with Civil War is that it does not present anything for me to really get into the meat and potatoes of, and this one definitely does. You could spend an extra 4 hours just talking about a few scenes in particular in this film and some of the themes in the film, and I think that just makes it a cinephile's dream to go see this movie. So I'll bump it up to 4.5.
Okay, Tyler, welcome in. We're officially brutalist boys now, I guess, in some capacity. And I do find our conversations to be very intellectually stimulating. So this has been a lot of fun. Um, let's go ahead and remind.
I think I'm gonna get away from you while I still can.
Well, I'm just saying. Let's go ahead and remind you about our title sponsor as well. That's MyBookie at mybookie.ag. Hey, you can go ahead and build up your bankroll. That's what Laszlo looked to do throughout the entire era there of the Brutalist. And you can do it a lot easier there with live sports, live casino. Just make sure you use that promo code next round there when you sign up at MyBookie at mybookie.ag, where you can bet on anything, anywhere, anytime. We're both betting big on the Brutalist being a mainstay in the Oscar conversation. How much will the AI controversy affect its campaign? We will have to sort of see what the rumblings are within the industry as all these other films look to sort of position themselves to be right there towards the top of the heap for the biggest prize in show business. For Tyler, I'm Tim. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss a Meltdown movie review.